Well, here I am again for lecture number 3. And tonight I just want to introduce my little friend. Uh, this is Lucky the Leprechaun. He's here to help me out with the presentation. Now, you might notice that I did get a haircut, but I have a pretty good head of hair. Poor Lucky, though, he wears his hat because he's a little embarrassed that it's all pretty much gone. But we still call him Lucky anyway. So, Lucky, you stand there, and if I make any mistakes, you can throw something at me. All right, so this is the third lecture, and if you have access to the book, which I hope most of you do by now, I would like you to go ahead and read chapter 1. Now, this is where I get to complain about the book. The authors of this book saw fit to dedicate maybe a page in chapter 1 to what I'm going to talk about tonight, which is giving your speech balance, and what I think is the most important concepts in learning public speaking. And as I keep beating it to death, not only public speaking, but communications in general. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a moment. If you read chapter 1, and I'm giving you that assignment, read chapter 1, I'll put that in an announcement as well. Uh, and before I forget, you do not need to take the quiz at the end of chapter 1. I'll put that in the announcement too. But anyway, in chapter 1, I believe it's pages 7 and 8, the authors talk about something known as ethos, pathos, and logos, and they add something that I think is totally unnecessary, but once again, I'll get to that in a minute. So let me begin at least with some general comments about giving your speech balance and the way this all works. All right, I have to start with an old dead guy, and yes, you need to know this fellow's name. You've all heard of him before, Aristotle. Aristotle, and that is this a real true picture of the man? I don't know. Look at those eyes. I don't know. I don't think so. We have no idea what the guy looked like. He might have been bald like Lucky as well, but who knows? Anyway, Aristotle wrote books about everything. I mean, this guy couldn't seem to stop writing books. He wrote books about writing plays. He wrote books about astronomy, physics, nature, biology, did a lot of science, and all sorts of other things. But the book that we're interested in that he produced is called The Rhetoric. Have you ever heard that word before? Have you ever heard the term rhetorical question? That's where this comes from. And you can see that Aristotle lived over 2,000 years ago. And so he obviously hand wrote this book out, and then scribes copied the book. And what's amazing is after more than 2,000 years, we still have the book. That's pretty incredible. That's how important this book was, especially in medieval Europe and then Renaissance and so on. It has been a main component of learning communications for 2,000 years. Pretty amazing. And he lists three elements known as logos, pathos, and ethos. And what he's trying to do here is tell his, 2,000 years ago, tell his students that giving a speech is all about the audience. You have to connect, and that is the key word. You have to connect with your audience. And these three elements, logos, pathos, and ethos, will help you do that. And obviously, I'm going to go through each of these as I present the lecture here. Now, again, just to demonstrate how important this was, uh, if you went to university in late medieval or early Renaissance Europe, you would have taken a curriculum called the Trivium. And the Trivium consisted of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, learning how to give a speech. Of course, think about it for a moment. We've only had radio, good radio, where people can sit down and turn on the knob and listen to people and music and so on. since the 1920s, basically 100 years. Television has only been common since the end of World War II, 60 years or so, 70 years tops. And so if you wanted people to know what was on your mind prior to that, the only way you could do it was stand up and give a speech. So in other words, for most of human history, that's how it was done. So you could run down to your local bookstore and pick up a copy of uh, Aristotle's Rhetoric. And oh my gosh, wouldn't I love to have a copy of the Rhetoric looks like that. Again, just a side note here. Remember, the printing press wasn't invented until about 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg. And before that, if you wanted a copy of textbook, any textbook, there are only two ways to get it. One is to borrow one. I guess there's three. You could, if you were incredibly rich, you could buy one, but that was ungodly expensive. You think signing up for Cengage or something is expensive. This was princely. Or you could borrow a copy and make a handwritten copy yourself, or you could hire a scribe, someone who did it professionally, to write it out for you. It was the only way you could get it. So anyway, but this book was so important, people kept copying it over and over and over again. All right, so, oh, I almost forgot your trivia question. All right, a trivia question of the day. Who was Aristotle's most famous student? Oh gosh, I wish I could do this in class with you. I'm always interested in hearing the answers. Quite often people will say Socrates or Plato. Well, it's a little confusing. If I get it right here, Socrates was the teacher of Plato, that Greek philosopher. Plato was the teacher of Aristotle. So there you go, kind of in a nutshell. But who was it? Well, Aristotle was teaching in what we now call Macedonia at the time, and his most famous student, who quit when he was 18 and said, I got other things to do, was Alexander the Great. And he said, oh, come on, Aristotle, I'm bored. I'm going to go out and conquer the world. And he did. And next time, well, some of you might not be old enough, but if you're at a trivia night somewhere and this question comes up, you'll win. All right, anyway, so let me get started here. So what is logos? Well, what's the meaning of logos? I'm going to give another lecture. I'll record another lecture very soon where I'm going to talk about logos again. But logos basically means, and it's a Greek word. All these words, of course, are Greek. It's a Greek word which means word, but it has a lot of other connotations as well. It also means, the word logic derives from it. Good reasoning derives from logos. But for this class in particular, it means good structure. In other words, how are you going to put your speech together? And this is what Aristotle is talking about. How do you put your speech together so that it makes sense? And so, again, for this class, think of logos as structure. There's another word that derives from logos. You're looking at the slide here. If you take away the letter S, you get the word logo. One of the other connotations, or the other meanings of the word logos in Greek is spirit. I find that fascinating. Like I said, I'm going to talk about this later, but it means spirit. And think about a logo. A really successful logo actually captures the spirit of whatever it represents. And I think the most famous logo on earth has to be the Nike Swish. And the Nike Swish is just that little check mark, encompasses so much: athletics, team building, um, uh, sportsmanship, and on and on and on. When you see that, you think of three words. I don't even have to write it out on the t-shirt. Just do it. All right. And of course, you can think of lots of other logos, McDonald's, and so on. This is another embedded meaning of logos, this ancient Greek word. But again, for the purposes of this class, think of logos as reason and structure, specifically structure. All right. And if you need a way to remember logos, lawyers, oh, there's the Simpsons again. I can't get away from them, can I? Lawyers use the idea of logos all the time. I mean, this is what they do for a living. When they put together cases, when they argue cases in court, they use logos, very highly structured, systematic presentations to try to convince a judge or a jury that a client may be guilty or a defendant may be innocent. So remember, lawyers, L, logos, structure, reasoning. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Now, I've mentioned job interviews before, and you might think, what's this got to do with logos? Well, once again, they're not wearing masks, are they? Okay, but anyway, I need to change all my slides. When you go to a job interview, the most terrifying part of this whole experience is sitting there and you might have a couple of people in the interview, one person, but after the niceties and the introductions, what do they say? They say, okay, Ray, we're glad you're here today. Tell us about yourself. So you need to be structured and logical in your presentation to these people so that they understand your strengths and why you should have that job. So yeah, it's a real thing, logos. So again, kind of a little bit of recapping here. So logos means logic or reasoning, like logic, logistics. No, some people ask me about logarithms. If you've taken math and you use logarithms, it comes from something else, but logic and so on. So, and it's all about becoming organized in the way you present your material. And of course, if there's any of you out there that are thinking about becoming teachers, this is absolutely paramount. Being able to put together a lesson plan that presents material logically. And basically, that's what I'm doing right here. I'm using logos to create structure in my lecture. So logos. So questions? Well, I don't know. Logos is synonymous with logical argument. And the term argument here doesn't mean you're getting in someone's face and you're having an argument with them. An argument, and lawyers make arguments in court. An argument is a logical presentation. That's all it means. Does it ask yourself these questions? When I put my speech together, does it make sense? Does it follow well from the beginning to the end? If it's an informative speech or a persuasive speech, do I have good facts, evidence, statistics, and so on embedded in my speech that are easy to follow and understand? And most of all, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to accomplish? And remember in, I think, the first video, I said that the most important part of a speech is the conclusion. Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't know what the outcome is, what do you want people to do? What do you want them to know? If it's a persuasive speech, how do you want them to change their thoughts or actions? If you don't know that before you begin the speech, then you're going to wander all over the place and your logos will be pretty much worthless. So that's logos, structure, reasoning, and it leads you to the desired outcome that you want for your presentation. Now ethos. Okay, I like Obama. I'm not going to make any bones about it. He had his strengths, he had his weaknesses like any president, but one of the overriding factors that I really liked about the man is he came across as honest. Ethos, honesty. Ethos, can you think of a word that, an English word that derives from that? Of course you can. Ethics. Ethics. And we want those people who stand up and tell us we should think a certain way or do things a certain way. We want to trust them that they're being honest with us, that they're being ethical. And this is ethos. And this is the second element that Aristotle talks about in his connecting with the audience. Logos allows your audience to connect with you in a structural way. In other words, you're easy to follow and easy to understand. Uh, Ethos, ethics, provides the trust element that your audience needs. Your audience needs to feel that they can trust you. So, ethos, it's all about the character and the appeal, if you like, of the person that's speaking. So let's see what I have on here. Before you convince your audience, okay, oh my gosh, look at this list for ethos. That you have to convince your audience that you're credible. Now, do I have ethos for this class? Well, I hope so. Why though? Why do I have ethos? Well, I have a lot of books behind me. But does that provide ethos? Maybe. If you think I read them all, I have. But what else? Well, you assume, and yeah, I know rule number 2 says never assume anything, but sometimes, you can make logical conclusions. You can assume that since the college hired me, that I must have some credentials to teach the class, and if you wanted to see them, I can provide my degrees from Michigan State University and other that I actually completed advanced coursework in communications. So there you go. I have credibility. Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes you're talking to coworkers or whatever, and you need to convince them that you are credible. We'll talk about strategies for that as we go along here. So it's about credibility, that connection that the audience believes and trusts you. And what else do I have here? Respect. Does the audience believe you are of good character? Ooh, okay. Uh, in the previous edition of this textbook, which I actually liked better than the current one, I'm complaining tonight. They always started the chapter out with kind of a real life example of what they were talking about. And in the chapter that covered credibility and ethos, they opened with a story about real story about the president or CEO of a huge charitable operation in a major city, a place that had millions of dollars that were being donated to it. And it started leaking out that there were discrepancies in the money. Okay. And the CEO came out onto the steps of this big building and he made a wonderful speech that everything was okay. He provided evidence. He sounded really credible. 6 months later, he was in jail for embezzlement. So, do we believe that the people we're listening to that are trying to tell us things, do we believe they are good character? Do we trust them? That's the next one. Are they trustworthy? And then, of course, are they an authority? Now, for your speeches, the informative and the persuasive speech, obviously, I'm not asking anyone to become an authority on a topic for a 7-minute speech. That's neither here nor there. But we need to at least know that you care and understand the topic that you're talking about. So that's ethos. That's what you're trying to connect with the audience. Let's see what else. Oh, and there's my Boy Scout again. Can't get away from this guy. It sounds a lot like a Boy Scout. But isn't, the people in charge, we have kind of an odd standard. We expect people in charge to have a higher moral character than we may consider that we have ourselves. Is that realistic? No, I don't know. But the point is we do have that preconceived notion that people in charge, people who tell us things, should be trustworthy, should be credible. They should be authorities on whatever they're doing for us to truly, truly connect with them. So ethos. Let's see. All right. So what is my little summary here? Okay, so it's not enough that that you're providing just credible sources. Uh, it's the audience really needs to have this perception of you. I hope you have a perception of me as being an authority on this topic, for all the reasons that I've mentioned. Sometimes you need to build that credibility so the audience perceives you as ethical and trustworthy. Case in point, a few years ago, this fellow, uh, doesn't he look a lot like a Boy Scout? Brian Williams. He was the NBC news anchor for the 5:30 news every night, Monday through Friday, for years. And he had the highest rating on network television for news presentation. This guy had credibility. He had ethos. Well, a few years ago, uh, Williams was interviewed on a late night talk show or something about his experiences as an embedded reporter during several conflicts, Iran, Afghanistan. And Williams told a few stories about his adventures with rocket propelled grenades and some other things. And it didn't take too long before some veterans who were with Williams in that unit started saying, wait a minute, it didn't actually happen that way. Williams was exaggerating. He wasn't exactly lying, but he was kind of he trying to build a bigger sense of his experience and importance. What happened to his credibility? Well, NBC took him off the air within a week. He was gone, just like that. That's what happens when you lose your credibility. And boy, isn't it, you may have heard this, that one of the most difficult things to regain is trust. If someone trusts you and you do something to break that trust, oh my gosh, how hard is it to get it back? I would like to point out that Brian Williams is still, you can still see him on MSNBC, so he's still working for them, but he lost that prime position of being America's most trusted news anchor. Amazing. It all happened over exaggeration, not even lying, just exaggeration. All right, so ethos. Um, when you as an audience are listening to a speaker, this is this is something that is imperative. You should sit there and in your mind, you should be thinking, how does the speaker know this? How do I know this is true? Don't, it's, a friend of mine just today sent me a picture on from the internet, from the Great Redwood Forest. And this guy, well, I won't go there. Anyway, um, I took one look at it, and it's a faked picture. You know, you've got to constantly question sources. You've got to constantly question those speakers, those people in authority. How do they know this is true? That's what you should be thinking. That's what ethos is. It's the part of the speaker to convince you they're ethical, they're credible, and it's incumbent on you as a listener to ask those questions as well. So anyway, oh, and I already said this, once you lose that trust, boy, getting it back is really, really tough. None of you have ever been in this situation, have you? Yes, haven't we all? Okay, pathos. All right. So logos, we get logic, logistics, all that kind of stuff. Ethos, we get ethics. Pathos is all about, you see this here, it means emotion. And it's harder to think of easily derived words. Empathy certainly comes from pathos. I thought pathetic did, but I'm not so sure about that. But it means emotion. And this is the third element that Aristotle says you need if you're going to truly connect. Remember, logos, ethos, and pathos are all about connecting with your listeners, whether it's a room with 5,000 people in it or 3 or 4 friends that you're trying to convince of something. Okay, this is emotion. And this is the one that you can have the most fun with. Uh, when we get to the informative and the persuasive speech, I'm going to talk about the balance. Which of these elements are the most important in that type of speech? I'll just tell you right now, for the persuasive speech, where you're trying to convince people of something, pathos is the most important element, the emotional connection. So, uh, can you think of a speech, well, that where pathos is really important? I sent you a link to it yesterday. Well, depending on when you watch this, I'm recording this on Saturday. Yesterday was Friday. I sent you that link about the famous I Have a Dream speech. That's probably one of the most famous that I can think of that represents the emotional connection with the audience. Oh, wait a minute. My third line there said, "Where might you hear a presentation where pathos is primary connecting source?" How about a sermon? You know, you can think of a lot of things, but if you want to see pathos in action, it's all about advertising. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to talk about that for a moment here. And here's some of it. You need that Dodge Ram truck. Get out there, men, and you get in that cab and you drive through the mud and the dirt, and then you are a man. You're not a man if you don't have that Dodge Ram truck. Okay, all right. Uh, that's pretty pathos. Maybe that is pathetic. I don't know. Especially at the holiday times, the commercials where the camera zooms in on the bars, you know, and then it goes in closer and you see the big puppy dog eyes, and the announcer comes on and says, "We here at the adoption center are looking for people to take these lovely little animals home. In fact, if you don't call and come down here in the next 15 minutes, this little dog is going to die." Oh my God, what are you going to do? Oh, pathos. Pathos, emotion. And I say, you got any favorite commercials you love to hate? Here's mine. Let's see if I. Oh yeah, the Charmin bears. Oh, my clock's about to go off. You'll know what time it is that I'm. What time is it? Oh my gosh, it's almost 7 o'clock. My clock has a little bit fast in here. All right, hang on. I should stop this while I'm lecturing, I guess. All right. So anyway, this is one that I love to hate. You know, they're funny commercials, but all I can think of is, what's the connection here? Do bears really need toilet paper? Don't bears go out in the woods and do whatever bears do? You know, I think the emotional connection here, when I really searched for this one, is we all had a favorite stuffed animal like a teddy bear. These kind of look like the little plush animals that we might have once had. So I don't know. Maybe that's where the connection is. But sometimes you can have fun with this stuff. And the artist at Charmin, some years back when the first Thor movie came out, this meme appeared on the internet. Get it? We've always been your Asgardians. Well, apparently management didn't think much of this meme and it disappeared from the internet pretty quickly. I like it. All right. So, ah, Sugar Pops. God, I love this cereal. My wife won't let me buy it. That's probably so bad for me. I still like it. I liked it when I was a kid. But look at it for a moment. When I was a kid, it was called Corn Pops. Oh, excuse me. I've got this backwards. When I was a kid, it was called Sugar Pops. Yes, that's what I love. And there was always this little chipmunk blasting the cereal with sugar. That's why I liked it so much. And I can't remember how many years ago it was. I was walking through the grocery store, and I haven't had a box of Sugar Pops in a long time. Go down that aisle, and I couldn't find them. And then I saw Kellogg's Corn Pops. I looked at the side with the ingredients on it. It's the same sugary cereal I ate when I was a kid. Why did they change the name from Sugar Pops to Corn Pops? Think about it. Ah, corn. That's supposed to be good for you, isn't it? It's an emotional statement. So sugar is no longer good. Corn is. So now it's the same old cereal, but it's corn pops, not sugar pops. This is where advertising uses pathos to woo us in to buying products based on an emotional response or even a connection that we might have with it. Let's see. Oh, you really need that vacation. I look at this. Oh man, it doesn't take much emotional content for me to say, you bet, sign me up. I want to go here. All right. So pathos is in your speech is you connecting with your audience, showing empathy, showing sympathy. There is another word that derives from pathos, uh, and there are certain words that we use that are pathos driven words: anger, hate, fear, love, and so on. All of these words, just by their nature, are emotional words, and so they are pathos driven. When you use those kind of words in your speech, you are creating an emotional connection with your audience. Sometimes it's a good connection, sometimes not, but it will make a connection. Uh, how do you really create this emotional connection? Again, I mentioned this before. The best way to do it is by storytelling. And I don't know if any of you have ever watched the annual State of the Union address. And presidents have been doing this for a long time now, where they'll be giving a speech and they'll be talking about how things are going in the country. And ultimately, they show the camera pans over to the gallery and they show a veteran or a mother, and a little story is told about these people and how, whatever may have happened to them. My goodness, storytelling is the best possible way to connect with your audience. Now, in a short speech, obviously, you're limited in how much you can do with that. But even in a short speech, you can incorporate the concept of storytelling. Now, in chapter 1, page 7, the authors have deemed to go beyond Aristotle to some extent and created a fourth element. And I'm going to talk about this. Personally, I don't care if you, well, it might be on the test, so I guess you should remember it. They talk about mythos. Mythos, and this is the storytelling. And I'll just read this. Well, the word comes from mythology, obviously. And I say it's the use of stories that appeal and relate to different cultures and ethnic groups. In other words, it's all about connecting with your audience. I personally think that the authors got this wrong. I get the idea of mythos, but I think it's a subcategory of pathos because storytelling is the way you create emotional content in a speech. So it's there. You can, as I say, this was not in the original rhetoric. Oh well, but it's in the book, and the questions do crop up about it. So again, mythos is all about storytelling. So here we go, a little bit of the summary. So ethos, I don't have them in the same order I just went through, but ethos, credibility. Do you trust the speaker? Do they connect with you on a trusting level? Emotion. Do they reach out to you and speak to you in some way? And of course, you as a speaker want to do this. And is the speech well structured? Is it easy to follow? Is it easy to understand? And does it reach some kind of conclusion that makes sense? So, and yeah, mythos is down there because you can accomplish this through storytelling. All right, but ethos, pathos, and logos are the three main elements that give your speech balance. Not just a public presentation. My goodness, if you're just trying to explain things to people, ethos, pathos, and logos can become important. So finding balance, and it's all about being able to bring people to a conclusion that makes sense. Let's see what I have here. Okay, one final thought. Yeah, I thought I had this on here. When you're giving a speech and you're looking out at an audience, and again, I keep going back to this, it doesn't have to be a formal speech, but when you're trying to convince people, one person or 1,000 people of something, This is what they're thinking. WIIFM. They're thinking, what's in this for me? And if you don't answer that question, you won't succeed in your presentation. So just bear that in mind. That's what your audience is thinking. What's in this for me? Oh my gosh, I hope you are watching this video. I hope you're thinking that exactly. What's in this presentation for me? What am I going to get out of this lecture? Well, there you go. Today I taught you about balance in public speaking with logos, ethos, and pathos. So go ahead and read chapter 1. As I said, though, I'll send that out in an announcement with some other things in the next day, or by the time I post this lecture for sure. Anyway, take care, and we'll see you in another lecture here pretty soon. Bye-bye.